Well, you could argue that over the years, there are a number of different contributions I've made to the Skylanders community. There's one in particular that I am most proud of. Back in 2014, when Skylanders Trap Team released, we had a problem that needed to be solved. We needed a way to differentiate the traps from one another. Unfortunately, this was not something that Activision or Toys for Bob made readily available at the retail level. All of the packaging was just labeled Life Trap or Fire Trap or Water Trap. It didn't matter what was inside the package. They just labeled it with the element. As far as gameplay goes, that's all you needed to know. But for us collectors, that was a different ballgame. Thankfully, within the menu structure of Skylanders Trap Team, they did have individual names for each of these traps. This was useful to some extent, but those names would get kind of clunky and cumbersome over the course of time when trying to define which trap is which. These weren't names that people could easily remember. Then we discovered that they did have individual names for the different molds that were used. I would argue that some of these names are a little bit questionable as well, but at least we had official names that we could use for these different traps. You may recognize the torch, the log holder, or even the infamous yawn traps. Regardless of how you feel about these names, this is not where my contribution lies. This was a problem that Activision did solve for us. My contribution came 2 years later. In Skylanders Imaginators, we had a similar problem. This time, though, it was the creation crystals. Once again, they just labeled them as Life Creation Crystal, or Fire Creation Crystal, or Undead Creation Crystal. That's all the indication the packaging would give you, because from a consumer standpoint, that's all you needed to know. But once again, I'm here for the collector. I am a collector, and I understand that mentality. Collectors need to be able to separate the different molds. So as the release date approached, and it was made evident that these crystals did not have official names, at least not names that were being released to the public, I decided to do something about it. It started with a simple post on my blog. We discovered that there would be 10 basic molds being used for the creation crystals. And since no official naming scheme has been shown to this point, we need to name these crystals. To facilitate this process, I simply asked for suggestions. I did provide a few naming guidelines though. The name should be quick and easy to remember. We are naming the outer casing, not the crystal shape inside, because as many people pointed out, there were different crystals on the inside of these creation crystals as well, and there is potential that we could have named those shapes, but I think that just would have added to the confusion. Continuing on with the guidelines though, I pointed out that the name will be used for multiple elements, so we don't have to worry about color. And finally, one-word names are preferred, but if you have the right name, 2 words could work. Over the next few days, I simply waited as the submissions started to roll in. At the end of the week, I compiled all the results and took a look at some of the names that popped up multiple times. From this information, I created another blog post with a bunch of polls. Again, I provided a few guidelines and then left it to the general public to vote. For each mold, I gave 3 possible names, and ultimately, I let the fans decide. In most cases, there was a very clear winner. Although the Angel mold was the closest of all the voting, and the Angel just beat out Wing by 1 single vote. I've mentioned this story to a number of Skylanders fans over the years, and it's a little surprising to me how few of them knew where these names came from. But these names are almost universally used in the Skylanders community. But the moment I knew I had really made it was when I saw these names being used on eBay. Not by people I knew, but by relative strangers posting their creation crystals for sale and using these names. These names that the community came up with. These names that were voted on by the fans. A part of me is very curious to know what would have happened with these creation crystals if I didn't take the initiative to put this together. What would we be calling each of these crystals? Would they just be numbered? Would we have 3 different names for every mold? How much confusion would there be? In any case, as I stated in the beginning, I think this is the contribution I am most proud of. And while I didn't come up with all the names myself, I took the initiative to get these names out there into the community. So a huge shout out to anyone who helped come up with these names. Thank you to anyone who helped vote for these names. And thank you to anyone who has ever used these names. It makes me very happy every time I see these names being used out in the public. So what's your favorite creation, Crystal? Let me know down in the comments below. Do you like these names? Are there any names you would change? I'd love to hear from you.